The Divine Comedy. The Inferno. By Dante Alighieri. Preface from Harmony. Dear listeners, in this book I have retold the legend of the Divine Comedy in a modern English method, retaining, however, as far as possible, the expressions and metaphors of Dante in his original writing. Prologue. Often I've seen a laborer, weary from work, pause at a cathedral door, lay down his burden, and with respectful steps, enter, cross himself, and kneel on the floor to recite his prayer. The noises of the world fade away, the loud clamor of the street becomes a distant roar. So, as I enter here day by day, leaving my burdens at this church gate, kneeling in prayer without shame, the tumult of the time fades to a quiet murmur, while eternal ages watch and wait. How strange the sculptures that adorn these towers! This crowd of statues, where birds build their nests in folded sleeves, while leaves canopy the portals like blooming trellises, and the vast cathedral seems like a cross of flowers. Fiends and dragons on the gargoyled eaves watch the dead Christ between the living thieves, and beneath them, Judas the traitor lurks. Ah! From what heart and brain agonies, what exultations trampling despair, what tenderness, tears, hate of wrong, and passionate outcry of a soul in pain, arose this poem of the earth and air, this medieval miracle of song. Canto 1. Midway on our life's journey, I found myself in a dark forest, for the straightforward path had been lost. Oh, how hard it is to describe that wild, rough, and stern forest, which even thinking about it renews the fear. It was so bitter, death is hardly more so, but to tell of the good I found there, I will speak of other things I saw. I cannot well repeat how I entered there, so full of sleep was I at the moment I abandoned the true way. But after I reached a mountain's foot, at the end of the valley that had pierced my heart with terror, I looked up and saw its shoulders already clothed with the rays of the planet that leads others right by every road. Then the fear that had lasted in the lake of my heart through the night I had passed so piteously was somewhat calmed. And just as someone who, with exhausted breath, emerges from the sea onto the shore, turns to gaze at the perilous water, so did my soul, still fleeing, turn back to re-behold the past which no living person ever left. After resting my weary body, I resumed the way on the deserted slope, so that my firm foot was always the lower. And lo! Almost at the start of the ascent, a light, swift panther appeared, covered with a spotted coat. She did not move from my face, but so impeded my way that many times I turned to retreat. The time was the beginning of the morning, and the sun was rising with those stars that were with him when divine love first moved those beautiful things. So, the variegated skin of that wild beast, the hour of time, and the sweet season gave me reason for good hope, yet not enough to overcome the fear I felt at the sight of a lion that appeared to me. He seemed to be coming against me with head high and ravenous hunger, so much so that the air seemed afraid of him. And a she-wolf, laden with all cravings in her leanness, which had caused many to live in misery. She brought such heaviness upon me with the fear that came from her sight that I lost hope of reaching the height. And as someone who willingly acquires and the time comes that causes them to lose, weeps in all their thoughts and is despondent, so did that beast make me, which, coming on against me by degrees, pushed me back where the sun is silent. While I was rushing downward to the lowland, before my eyes there appeared someone who seemed hoarse from long silence. When I saw him in the vast desert, I cried out to him, "Have pity on me, whoever you are, whether a shade or a real man." He answered me, "Not a man. I once was a man, and my parents were Lombards, both Mantuan by country. I was born under Julius, though late, and lived in Rome under the good Augustus, in the time of the false and lying gods. I was a poet, and I sang of that just son of Anchises who came from Troy after proud Ilion was burned. But why do you go back to such suffering? Why don't you climb the delightful mountain that is the source and cause of all joy? Are you then Virgil, the fountain from which such a wide river of speech flows?" I answered him with a bashful forehead. "O honor and light of other poets, may the long study and great love that made me explore your volume help me now. You are my master and my author. You alone are the one from whom I took the beautiful style that has brought me honor. See the beast that made me turn back. Help me, famous sage, for she makes my veins and pulses tremble." "You must take another path," he responded when he saw me weeping, "if you want to escape this savage place. Because this beast, which you cry out about, lets no one pass her way, but so harasses him that she destroys him. She has a nature so evil and ruthless that she never satisfies her greedy will, and, after feeding, is hungrier than before. Many are the animals with whom she mates, and more will they be until the greyhound comes, who will make her die in her pain. He will not feed on earth or wealth but on wisdom, love, and virtue. His nation shall be between Feltro and Feltro. He shall save lowly Italy, for which the maid Camilla, Euryalus, Turnus, and Nisus died from wounds. He will hunt her through every city until he drives her back to hell, from where envy first released her. So I think it best for you to follow me, and I will be your guide and lead you from here through an eternal place, where you will hear the desperate cries, see the ancient spirits in sorrow, who cry out for a second death, and you will see those who are content in the fire, because they hope to come, whenever it may be, to the blessed people. If you wish to ascend to them, a soul more worthy than I will accompany you when I depart. Because that emperor who reigns above, since I was rebellious to his law, wills that through me none come into his city. He governs everywhere and reigns there. There is his city and his lofty throne. Oh, happy is he whom he elects. And I to him, Poet, I beg you, by that same God you did not know, so I may escape this woe and worse, lead me to where you said, so I may see the gate of St. Peter, and those you make so sad. Then he moved on, and I followed him. Canto 2. The day was fading, and the darkened air released the creatures on earth from their fatigue, and I, the only one, prepared myself to endure the journey, both the way and the woe, which memory that errs not shall recall. O Muses, O high genius, help me now! O memory, that wrote down what I saw, here your nobility will be shown. And I began, Poet, who guides me, consider my strength if it is enough before you trust me to the arduous pass. You say that the parent of Silvius went to the immortal world while still corruptible, and was there bodily. But if the adversary of all evil was courteous, thinking of the great effect that would come from him, and who, and what, to men of intellect it seems not unfit, for he was chosen as the father of great Rome and her empire in the imperial heaven, the holy place where the successor of the greatest Peter sits. On this journey, which you praise, he heard things that were the reason for his victory and the papal mantle. Later, the chosen vessel went there to bring back comfort to that faith which is the start of the way to salvation. But I, why come there, or who allows it? I am not Aeneas, I am not Paul, either I nor others think me worthy of it. So if I surrender to this journey, I fear it may be foolish. You are wise, you know better than I what I speak. As someone who unwills what they once wanted and changes their mind with new thoughts, so that they withdraw from their intention, so I became on that dark hillside, because, by thinking, I ended the project I was so eager to start. If I have understood your words well, replied that magnanimous shade, your soul is tainted with cowardice, which often encumbers a man, turning him back from honored enterprise, as false sight does a shy beast. To free you from this fear, I will tell you why I came and what I heard at the first moment I grieved for you. I was among those in suspense, and a fair, saintly lady called to me in such a way, I begged her to command me. Her eyes were shining brighter than the star. She began to speak gently and low, with an angelic voice in her own language. O courteous spirit of Mantua, whose fame endures in the world and will endure as long as the world lasts, a friend of mine, not fortune's friend, is so hindered on his journey that he has turned through terror and may already be so lost that I have risen too late to help, from what I heard of him in heaven. Bestir yourself now, and with your ornate speech and all that is needed for his release, assist him so that I may be consoled. Beatrice am I, who sends you? I come from where I long to return. Love moved me, which makes me speak. When I am in my Lord's presence, often will I praise you to him. Then she paused, and I began, O Lady of Virtue, through whom alone the human race surpasses all contained within the heaven of smaller circles, so grateful to me is your command, that if it were already done, it would be late. No farther need you open your wish to me. But tell me why you do not shun the descent into this center from the vast place you burn to return to. Since you wish to know so deeply, briefly will I tell you, she answered, why I am not afraid to enter here. One should only fear those things that have the power to harm others. Of the rest, no, because they are not fearful. God in His mercy made me such that your misery does not touch me, nor any flame of this burning assails me. A gentle lady in heaven grieves at this impediment, for which I send you, so that stern judgment above is broken. She asked Lucia to help, saying, Your faithful one now needs you, and I commend him to you. Lucia, enemy of all cruelty, came to where I was with ancient Rachel and said, Beatrice, true praise of God, why do you not help him who loved you so, for your sake left the vulgar crowd? Do you not hear his pitiful lament? Do you not see the death that combats him beside the river where ocean has no boast? No one in the world was as quick to gain or escape their woe as I was, after those words were said, to come down here from my blessed seat, trusting in your noble speech that honors you and those who hear it. After she spoke to me, she turned her shining eyes away, making me more eager to come. So I came to you, as she desired. I freed you from that beast that barred the short ascent to the beautiful mountain. What is it then? Why do you delay? Why does such cowardice lodge in your heart? Why do you not have courage and hardihood when 3 such blessed ladies care for you in heaven, and my words promise you so much good? As the flowers, bowed and closed by the night's chill, rise and open when the sun whitens them, so did I become with my exhausted strength, and such good courage coursed to my heart that I began like an intrepid person, O compassionate woman who helped me, and courteous you, who obeyed so soon the true words she told you. You have disposed my heart to this adventure with your words so that I have returned to my first intent. Now go, for we both share one will, you, leader, lord, and master. I spoke to him, and when he moved I entered on the deep and savage way. Canto 3. Through me, the way is to the sorrowful city. Through me, the way is to eternal sorrow. Through me, the way among the lost people. Justice moved my high maker. Divine power made me, supreme wisdom, and primal love. Before me, nothing was created except eternal things, and I endure eternally. Abandon all hope, you who enter here. I saw these words in dark color written at the top of a gate. Master, their meaning is hard to me. I said to him, and he, as an experienced person, answered, All suspicion must be abandoned here. All cowardice must be extinct. We have come to the place where I told you will see the sorrowful people who have lost the good of intellect. After he laid his hand on mine with a cheerful look that comforted me, he led me among the secret things. There, sighs, complaints, and loud laments resounded through the starless air, making me weep at the start. Various languages, horrible dialects, accents of anger, words of agony, and high and hoarse voices, with sounds of hands, made a tumult that circles forever in that eternally dark air, like the sand when a whirlwind blows. My head bound with horror, I said, Master, what is this I hear? What kind of people are these, defeated by pain? And he to me, This miserable state is endured by the sad souls of those who lived without disgrace or praise. They are mixed with that despicable chorus of angels who were neither rebellious nor faithful to God but stood for themselves. The heavens drove them out to maintain their beauty, and the deep hell does not receive them, so the wicked have no glory from them. And what is so painful for them that they lament so loudly? I asked. I will tell you briefly, he replied. These souls have no hope of death, and their blind life is so mean that they are envious of every other fate. The world allows no fame of them. Mercy and justice disdain them. Let us not speak of them but look and pass. And I, looking again, saw a banner that, whirling round, ran on so fast it seemed to disdain any pause. Behind it came so long a line of people that I would never have believed that death had undone so many. After I recognized some among them, I saw the shade of him who made the great refusal out of cowardice. Immediately, I understood that this was the wretched group rejected by both God and his enemies. These miserable beings, who never truly lived, were naked and constantly stung by gadflies and hornets, which made their faces stream with blood and tears, collected at their feet by disgusting worms. As I continued to look, I saw people on a great river's bank, so I asked, Master, now let me know who these are and what law makes them so eager to pass over, as I discern in the dim light. And he to me, all will be clear to you as soon as we reach the sorrowful shore of Acheron. Then, ashamed, I lowered my eyes, fearing my words might have angered him, and refrained from speaking until we reached the river. And behold, an old man, hoary with age, came towards us in a boat, crying, "Woe to you, wicked souls! Never hope to see heaven again. I come to lead you to the other shore, to eternal darkness, heat, and cold. And you, living soul, depart from the dead." But when he saw that I did not move, he said, "By another way, by other ports, you will reach the shore, not here for passage. A lighter vessel must carry you." And my guide replied, "Sharon, do not vex yourself. It is willed there where there is power to do what is willed, and question no more." Then the boatman of the Leviathan calmed his fiery wheels, and the souls, weary and naked, changed color and gnashed their teeth when they heard those cruel words. They blasphemed God, their parents, humanity, the place, the time, the seed of their birth and engendering. Then, all together, they drew back, weeping bitterly, to the accursed shore, where everyone who does not fear God must go. Sharon, the demon with eyes of burning coals beckoning to them, gathered them all together, beating with his or whoever lagged behind. As in autumn, the leaves fall off one after the other until the branch surrenders all its spoils to the earth, so did the evil seed of Adam cast themselves from that shore one by one, at his signal, like a bird at its call. They departed across the dark water, and before they landed on the other side, a new group assembled on this side. "My son," said the courteous master, "all those who perish in God's wrath come together here from every land, ready to cross the river because divine justice spurs them on, so that their fear turns into desire. A good soul never passes this way. Therefore, if Sharon complains of you, now you understand what his words mean." When he finished, the gloomy plain trembled so violently that the memory of that terror still bathes me in sweat. The tearful land released a wind that flashed a red light, overpowering all my senses, and like someone seized by sleep, I fell. Canto 4. A loud thunder broke the deep sleep in my head, making me jump up like someone forcibly awakened. I moved my rested eyes around, stood up straight, and looked intently to recognize where I was. I found myself on the edge of a deep, sorrowful valley that gathers the thunderous sounds of countless laments. It was dark, deep, and cloudy, so that peering into its depths, I saw nothing. "Now let us descend into the blind world," said the poet, pale as death. "I will go first, and you shall follow." And I, seeing his pallor, said, "How can I come if you, who are my comfort in fear, are afraid?" And he to me, "The anguish of the people below imprints itself on my face as pity, which you mistake for fear. Let's go, for the long journey urges us." So he entered, and I followed him into the first circle that surrounds the abyss. Here, as far as I could hear, there were no lamentations, only sighs that made the eternal air tremble. These arose from sorrow without torment, felt by the great multitude of infants, women, and men. "Master, who are these souls, whom I see and hear?" I asked. They did not sin. If they had merit, it was not enough because they lacked baptism, which is the gateway to the faith you follow. They lived before Christianity and did not worship God properly. Among these am I. For such defects, and no other guilt, we are lost, and only live with this desire without hope. Great sorrow gripped my heart when I heard this, knowing that worthy people were in that limbo. "Tell me, Master, tell me, my Lord," I began, wanting to be sure about that faith which overcomes all errors. "Has anyone ever left here by their own merit or another's, to be blessed afterward?" He, understanding my hidden question, replied, "I was new to this state when I saw a mighty one come here crowned with victory signs. He took the shade of our first parent, his son Abel, Noah, Moses the lawgiver, obedient Abraham, David the king, Israel with his father and children, Rachel, for whom he worked so much, and many others, and made them blessed. Before these, no human souls were saved. We did not stop, but still moved through the crowded forest of spirits. Not far had we gone when I saw a fire that overcame a hemisphere of darkness. We were still distant, but I could partially see that honorable people held that place. O you who honor every art and science, Who are these who have such honor that it sets them apart from the rest? I asked. And he to me, the honorable name that resounds of them above in your life gains favor in heaven, advancing them so. Meanwhile, a voice was heard by me, honor the great poet, his shade returns. After the voice ceased and was quiet, for mighty shades approached us with neither sorrowful nor glad expressions. My gracious master began, behold the one with the sword in hand who comes before the three, as their lord. That is Homer, the sovereign poet. Next is Horace the satirist, then Ovid, and the last is Lucan. Because each of these shares the name the solitary voice proclaimed, they honor me and do well in that. Thus I saw the fair school of that lord of highest song, who soars like an eagle above the rest. After some discourse, they turned to me with signs of salutation, and my master smiled at this. They honored me further, making me one of their band, so that I was the sixth among so much wisdom. So we went on to the light, speaking things it is good to keep silent, as fittingly as was the speech where I was. We came to the foot of a noble castle, encircled 7 times with high walls, protected by a beautiful stream. We passed over this as if on firm ground and entered through 7 gates with these sages. We reached a fresh green meadow, where people with solemn eyes and slow-moving with great authority in their faces spoke rarely and with gentle voices. We drew aside to an open, luminous place where they all were visible. There on the green enamel, mighty spirits were pointed out to me, whom to have seen exalted me. I saw Electra with many companions, including Hector and Aeneas, Caesar in armor with falcon eyes, Camilla, Penthesilea, King Latinus with Lavinia his daughter, Brutus who drove Tarquin out, Lucretia, Julia, Marcia, Cornelia, and alone apart, the Saladin. When I lifted my brows a bit, I saw the master of those who know, surrounded by his philosophic family. All gazed upon him and did him honor. I saw Socrates and Plato nearest to him, Democritus, who ascribes the world to chance, Diogenes, Anaxagoras, Thales, Zeno, Empedocles, Heraclitus, the good collector of qualities, Dioscorides, Orpheus, Cicero, Livy, Seneca the moralist, Euclid the geometrician, Ptolemy, Galen, Hippocrates, Avicenna, and Averroes, who made the great commentary. I cannot portray them all fully because the long theme drives me onward, often falling short of the fact. The 6-fold company divided into 2. My wise guide led me out of the quiet into trembling air and to a place where nothing shines. Canto 5. Thus I descended from the first circle to the second, which encloses less space but greater woe that goads to wailing. There Minos stands, grinning horribly, examining sins at the entrance, judging, and sending each soul to its proper place in hell. When the evil soul comes before him, it confesses everything, and this judge of transgression sees what place in hell is fit for it. He wraps his tail around himself as many times as the level he assigns. Always before him stands a throng, each one in turn confesses, hears, and is hurled down. O you who come to this sorrowful hostel, said Minos to me, when he saw me, pausing his great office, beware how you enter and whom you trust, let not the wide entrance deceive you. And my guide, why do you cry out? Do not impede his fated journey, it is willed above where there is power to do what is willed. Ask no more. Now began the wailing notes to reach my ears, now I had come where much lamentation struck me. I entered a place mute of all light, which bellows like a sea in a storm when opposed by conflicting winds. The infernal hurricane that never rests drives the spirits onward in its force. Whirling and smiting, it torments them. When they arrive at the precipice, there are the shrieks, complaints, and laments. There, they blaspheme divine power. I understood that this torment was assigned to the carnal sinners who subjugated reason to appetite. As starlings fly in large flocks in the cold season, so does that blast drive the accursed spirits, here and there, up and down. They have no hope of rest or lesser pain, and as cranes fly chanting their lays, making a long line in the air, so I saw the shadows coming, uttering lamentations, borne on by that storm. Master, who are these people punished by the black wind? I asked. The first one you wished to know, he answered, was Empress of many languages. To sensual vices, she was so given that lust became lawful in her law to remove the blame she had incurred. She is Semiramis, of whom we read that she succeeded Ninus and was his wife. She held the land now ruled by the Sultan. The next is Dido, who killed herself for love and broke faith with the ashes of Sychaeus. Then there is Cleopatra, the voluptuous. Helen is here, for whom so many seasons revolved, and the great Achilles, who fought at the last hour with love. Paris is here, Tristan, and many others he named, pointing them out, whom love had separated from our life. After I had heard my teacher name the dames and knights of old, I felt pity and was almost bewildered. I began, "O poet, I wish to speak to those two who go together, and seem so light upon the wind." He replied, "Wait until they come nearer, then implore them by that love which leads them, and they will come." Soon as the wind brought them close, I raised my voice, "O weary souls, come speak with us, if no one forbids it." As doves called by desire fly with steady wings to the sweet nest, so these souls came from the band where Dido is, approaching us through the dark air, so strong was my affectionate plea. O living creature, gracious and kind, who visits us through this purple air, stained by us who stained the world blood-red, if the King of the universe were our friend, we would pray for your peace, since you pity our perverse plight. Speak and listen as you please, while the wind is still, as it is now. The city where I was born sits by the sea where the pit descends to rest with all its followers. Love, which swiftly seizes the gentle heart, captured this one for the beautiful person taken from me, still so affecting me. Love, which spares no one loved from loving, seized me with pleasure in him so strong that, as you see, it never leaves me. Love led us to one death. Kind awaits him who took our lives. These words were carried from them to us. After I heard these tormented souls, I bowed my face and wept until the poet said to me, "What are you thinking?" When I answered, I began, "Alas! How many sweet thoughts, how much longing, led them to this sorrowful pass." Then I turned to them and spoke, "Francesca, your suffering moves me to tears. But tell me, how did love allow you to know your desires?" And she to me, "There is no greater sorrow than to remember the happy time in misery, as your teacher knows. But if you wish to know the first root of our love, I will speak as one who weeps and tells. One day, for amusement, we read of Lancelot and how love enthralled him. We were alone and without fear. Many times our eyes met during that reading, driving the color from our faces, but one moment overcame us. When we read how the desired smile was kissed by such a lover, this one, who will never be parted from me, kissed my mouth, trembling. Galato was the book and he who wrote it. That day, we read no more. While one spirit spoke, the other wept so that for pity, I fainted as if I were dying and fell like a dead body. Canto 6. When I recovered consciousness, I was still in the state of mind that caused such pity. Already around me had gathered the souls who stopped their weeping and shivering in the rain. As a man freed from fatigue stands with a sigh, so did I rise, weary, and looked around to see the place I was in and the agony of the soaked souls. On my right, my courteous master began, "Look, pass along, and I will guide you on your way." And I, deprived of speech, was overcome by the misery that adhered to my soul with a weary will. Already around me had gathered the souls who stopped their weeping and shivering in the rain. As a man freed from fatigue stands with a sigh, so did I rise, weary, and looked around to see the place I was in and the agony of the soaked souls. On my right, my courteous master began, "Look, pass along, and I will guide you on your way." And I, deprived of speech, was overcome by the misery that adhered to my soul with a weary will. Already around me had gathered the souls who stopped their weeping and shivering in the rain. As a man freed from fatigue stands with a sigh, so did I rise, weary, and looked around to see the place I was in and the agony of the soaked souls. On my right, my courteous master began, "Look, pass along, and I will guide you on your way." And I, deprived of speech, was overcome by the misery that adhered to my soul with a weary will. Already around me had gathered the souls who stopped their weeping and shivering in the rain. As a man freed from fatigue stands with a sigh, so did I rise, weary, and looked around to see the place I was in and the agony of the soaked souls. On my right, my courteous master began, "Look, pass along, and I will guide you on your way." And I, deprived of speech, was overcome by the misery that adhered to my soul with a weary will. Canto 7. In the fourth circle, Plutus stood with a hoarse voice, chanting, Pate Satan, Alep." The wise sage, who knew everything, said to encourage me, "Do not fear, whatever power he has will not stop our descent." Then he turned to the bloated demon and said, "Be silent, cursed wolf, consume your rage within yourself. This journey to the abyss is not without cause, it is willed on high, where Michael wrought vengeance on the proud adultery. As sails collapse when the mast breaks, so the cruel monster fell to the ground. We descended into the fourth chasm, gaining more of the sorrowful shore that holds all the world's woes. Justice of God, who heaps up so many new torments as I saw. And why does our sin so waste us? As the billow breaks upon Charybdis, so here, people must dance their rounds. I saw more people here than elsewhere, rolling weights forward with their chests. They clashed and turned, shouting, "Why hoard? And why squander?" My heart pierced, I asked, "Master, who are these people? Were all of them clerics with shaved heads?" And he to me, "They were squint-minded in life, wasting or hoarding without measure." Their voices bark it clearly when they reach the 2 points of the circle where the opposite sin separates them. Clerics, popes, and cardinals with no hair on their heads are here, overcome by avarice. Recognizing any would be futile. Their blind lives made them unrecognizable. They will eternally clash here. These will rise from their graves with closed fists, those with shorn hair. Ill-giving and ill-keeping have removed them from the fair world to this scuffle. Now, son, see the transient farce of goods committed to fortune, for which humanity brawls. All the gold under the moon could never make one of these souls rest. Master, tell me also, what is this fortune that clutches the world's goods? And he to me, "O foolish creatures, what ignorance grips you? Let me explain. He whose knowledge transcends all created the heavens and gave them guides, distributing light equally. He ordained a general ministrant and guide for the mundane splendors, who shifts the empty treasures from race to race, from blood to blood, beyond human wisdom. One people triumphs, another languishes, following her judgment, hidden as a serpent in the grass. Your knowledge cannot counter her. She judges, provides, and governs like the other gods. Her changes have no pause. Necessity drives her on. Often someone gains what another loses. She is crucified even by those who should praise her, blamed wrongly. She is blissful, hearing none of it. She turns her sphere among the glad primal creatures, rejoicing. Let's go now to greater woe. The stars sink as we set out, and we must not delay. We crossed the circle to another bank, near a boiling fountain pouring into a gully. The water was darker than deep blue. We entered a marsh made by this dismal stream. Intent on observing, I saw people in the muddy swamp, naked and angry. They struck each other with hands, heads, breasts, and feet, tearing each other with their teeth. The good master said, "Son, these souls were overcome by anger. Beneath the water are more who sigh and make the surface bubble. They say, we were sullen in the sweet air, bearing the sluggish smoke in our hearts. Now we are sullen in this black mire." This hymn they gurgle in their throats, unable to speak it clearly. Circling the filthy fin, we reached a tower at last. Canto 8. I say, continuing, that long before we reached the tower's foot, our eyes were drawn upward by 2 flamelets, signaling another far off. "Master, what do these flames say, and who made them?" And he to me, "Across the murky waves you will discern what is expected if the mist doesn't obscure it. An arrow shot from a bow never flew as fast as a small boat I saw coming towards us, piloted by a lone figure who shouted, 'Now you are here, wicked soul!' Phlegias, Phlegias, you cry in vain," said my lord. "This time, you will not have us except in passing the swamp." Phlegias, hearing he had been deceived, fumed with rage. My guide descended into the boat, then made me enter, and only when I boarded did it seem laden. As soon as we were in, the ancient prow moved, cleaving more water than usual. While we sailed the dead canal, a muddy figure rose in front of me and said, "Who are you that come before your time? "And who are you, so squalid?" I replied. "I am one who weeps," he answered. "With weeping and wailing, you accursed spirit, remain. I know you, though defiled." He reached for the boat, but my wary master pushed him back, saying, "Away, there with the other dogs." Then he embraced me and kissed my face, saying, "Blessed be she who bore you." That arrogant spirit in the world was full of pride. Now his shade is furious and gnashes his teeth. Many are esteemed great kings up there who will be like swine in mire, leaving behind horrible reputations. Master, I would be pleased to see him submerged in this broth before we leave the lake. "You shall be satisfied," he replied. "Before we reach the shore, your desire will be met." A little after that, I saw such havoc wrought upon him by the muddy souls that I still praise and thank God for it. They shouted, "At Filippo Argenti!" The enraged Florentine spirit turned on himself with his own teeth. We left him, and more I tell not, but lamentation smote my ears, and I turned my eyes ahead. "Now, my son," said the good master, "the city of Dis draws near with its grave citizens and great throng. I already see its mosques, master, glowing vermilion as if they came from the fire. He to me, the eternal fire within makes them appear red, as you see in this lower hell." We arrived within the moats of the disconsolate city. The walls seemed made of iron. After making a wide circuit, we reached a place where the boatman cried, "Debark, here is the entrance." More than 1,000 fallen angels rained down from heaven, shouting, "Who is this that comes without death through the kingdom of the dead?" My wise master made a sign to speak with them secretly. They calmed their disdain and said, "Come alone, and he who dares enter this domain so boldly, let him return alone. Try if he can. You who escorted him through this dark land, stay here." Think, reader, if I was discomforted at hearing these cursed words, believing I would never return, I pleaded, "O my dear guide, who has saved me from perils, do not leave me thus undone. If we cannot go farther, let us retrace our steps together swiftly." "Fear not," he reassured me. "No one can take our passage. It is willed above. Wait here and comfort your weary spirit with hope. I will not leave you in this nether world." He left me, and I remained in doubt, for no and yes conflicted within my head. I could not hear what he proposed, but he did not linger long before they all ran back inside. The gates closed on my lord's chest, who returned with slow steps. His eyes cast down, he sighed, saying, "Who has denied me these sorrowful houses?" And to me, "Fear not my anger. I will overcome this trial. This arrogance is not new. They once dared at a less secret gate, still unfastened. You saw the inscription above it. Now, descending from heaven comes one who will open this city." Canto 9. The Furies, the Angel, the City of Dis, the Sixth Circle, Heresiarchs. The fear that showed on my face when I saw my guide turn back quickly made his new color fade. He stood like someone listening intently, unable to see far through the thick, dark air. "We must win this fight," he began, "or else. I wish someone would come." Though he tried to cover his worry, I caught the beginning and the end of his sentence, and my imagination filled in the rest, making me more afraid than his words alone. I asked, "Has anyone ever come down here from the first level, which only cuts off hope as its punishment?" He replied, "It's rare for one of us to take this journey. I only did it once before, summoned by the witch Eric though, who called souls back to their bodies. My flesh had barely been cold when she made me enter the city to bring a spirit back from the circle of Judas, the lowest and darkest part, farthest from heaven. I know the way, so don't worry. This swamp, which stinks horribly, surrounds the sorrowful city where we can't enter without a fight." As he spoke, my attention was drawn to the high tower with red flames at its top, where 3 blood-stained furies suddenly appeared. They looked like women but were girded with green hydras and had serpents and cerastes for hair. My guide, who knew the handmaids of the Queen of Endless Sorrow, said, "Look at the fierce Aaron, yes. The one on the left is Majura. The one crying on the right is Alecto. Tisiphone is in the middle." Then he fell silent. Each of them tore at their breasts with their nails, beat themselves with their palms, and screamed so loudly that I pressed close to the poet in fear. "Let Medusa come and turn him to stone," they shouted, looking down. "We failed to punish Theseus properly." "Turn around and close your eyes," my guide said to me. "If the Gorgon appears and you see her, you will never return to the upper world." He turned me around and covered my eyes with his own hands, not trusting me to do it myself. "Oh, you with sound intellects, observe the hidden meaning under the veil of my strange verses." Suddenly, across the turbulent waves came a terrifying sound that made both shores tremble, like a violent wind caused by opposing heat currents that tears through a forest, breaking branches and scattering them, driving wild animals and shepherds before it. My eyes were freed, and my guide said, "Look over there, where the smoke is thickest." As frogs scatter before a hostile serpent, I saw more than 1,000 ruined souls fleeing from one who walked across the Styx with dry feet. Waving his left hand before his face to brush away the unwholesome air, he seemed weary only from that effort. I knew he was sent from heaven and turned to my guide, who signaled me to stay quiet and bow. Ah, how disdainful he seemed! He reached the gate and opened it with a small rod, meeting no resistance. "O outcasts from heaven, despised people," he began. "Why this arrogance? Why do you resist that will which cannot be thwarted and has often increased your pain? What good is it to kick against the fates? Remember Cerberus, whose throat and chin are still raw from being peeled." Then he turned back along the filthy path, saying nothing to us but looking like someone driven by a higher concern. We followed confidently behind his holy words. Inside, I was eager to see the condition of the fortress, so I looked around as soon as we entered. I saw a vast plain full of distress and torment, like the cemeteries in Arles by the Rhone or Pola near the Cornaro, but here the graves were even more painful. Flames burned among the tombs, heating them so intensely that no art could make iron hotter. The lids of the tombs were lifted, and dreadful laments rose from the tormented souls inside. I asked, "Master, who are these people who lie in these tombs and cry out in pain?" He replied, "Here lie the heretics and their followers of all sections. The graves are more and less heated according to their sins." We turned right and continued between the walls of the city and the tormented souls. Canto 10. Farinata and Cavalcante de Cavalcante. We continued along a narrow path between the torments and the city wall. O supreme power that guides me through these impious circles as you please, satisfy my longing. The people lying in these tombs, can they be seen? The covers are all lifted, and no one guards them. He answered, "When the bodies return from Jehoshaphat, these tombs will be sealed again. Here lie Epicurus and his followers, who believe the soul dies with the body. Your question will soon be answered, and your silent wish as well." I said, "Good leader, I hide my heart from you only to speak less, but you have often prompted me to reveal it." A voice suddenly called out, "O Tuscan, who passes alive through this city of fire, stay a moment, please. Your speech shows you are from that noble homeland which I may have harmed." I pressed closer to my guide, fearing, and he said, "Turn around. What are you doing? Behold Farinata who has risen. From the waist up you will see him." I already fixed my eyes on his and saw him rise with chest and brow high, as if he held hell in disdain. My leader urged me forward, saying, "Be clear in your speech." At the tomb's foot, Farinata eyed me disdainfully and asked, "Who were your ancestors?" I, eager to obey, revealed everything, and he raised his brows a little. They were fierce opponents to me, my ancestors, and my party, so much that I scattered them twice. "They returned from exile both times," I answered, "but your side never learned that art." A shadow appeared beside him, rising to his knees. He looked around, eager to see if anyone was with me, but when his suspicion faded, he wept, "If through genius you visit this prison, where is my son? Why isn't he with you? I come not on my own. He who waits leads me here. Perhaps your Guido scorned him." His manner and punishment revealed his name, so I answered fully. Suddenly he cried out, "How? He had? Is he not alive? Does the sweet light not strike his eyes?" Realizing my delay in answering, he fell back, seeing no more. But the other, the magnanimous Farinata, continued, if they haven't learned that art well, it torments me more than this bed. But before the lady who reigns here kindles her face 50 times, you will know how hard that art is. And when you return to the sweet world, tell me why my people are so cruel to my race. I answered, the slaughter and carnage that stained the Arbia red cause our prayers in our temple. He sighed and shook his head. I wasn't alone in that, nor without reason did I move with others. But I was alone when everyone agreed to raise Florence, and I defended her openly. I pleaded, please solve this knot that entangles my thoughts. It seems you can see the future but not the present. He answered, we see things far off, like those with imperfect sight. The sovereign ruler still shines on us, but when they come near, or happen, our intellect fails, and unless someone tells us, we know nothing of your state. You understand, our knowledge will be dead when the future door closes. Feeling guilty, I said, tell that fallen one his son lives. My silence was due to my contemplation, now clarified. My master called me back, so I asked the spirit to tell me who was with him. He replied, with over 1,000 lie here. Frederick too and the cardinal are among us. He hid himself, and I turned to the ancient poet, pondering his hostile words. He moved on, asking, why are you so bewildered? I explained, and he instructed me to remember his teachings. When you stand before the sweet radiance of her who sees all, she will tell you your life's journey. We turned left, leaving the wall, heading towards a valley with a foul stench. Canto 11. Pope Anastasius. General description of the Inferno and its divisions. On the edge of a high cliff surrounded by broken rocks, we encountered an even crueler crowd. The horrible stench from the abyss below made us step aside behind a large tomb inscribed with, "Here lies Pope Anastasius, led astray by Photinus." We must go slowly to get used to the foul smell, my guide advised. I asked him to find a way to make use of the time, and he replied, I am considering that. He began, my son, within these rocks are 3 smaller circles, each full of damned spirits. Listen and understand why they are here. Every malice hated by heaven ends in harming others, either by force or fraud. Fraud, being uniquely human, offends God more and is punished most harshly. The first circle is for the violent, divided into 3 rounds based on whom they harmed, God, themselves, or their neighbors. Murders and injuries against others, robbery, and plundering are punished in the first round. Suicides and those who squander their possessions suffer in the second. Blasphemers, sodomites, and usurers reside in the third. He continued, fraud against those who trust us is especially sinful. It breaks natural love and bonds of trust. Therefore, hypocrites, flatterers, sorcerers, thieves, and simoniacs are punished in the second circle. Traitors, the most sinful, suffer in the smallest circle, where Lucifer resides. I asked, why are the souls punished outside the Red City, not in these lower circles? He answered, has your mind wandered? Recall what you learned in ethics. There are 3 dispositions heaven rejects: incontinence, malice, and mad bestiality. Incontinence offends God less, which is why those souls suffer less punishment outside the city. Your explanations satisfy me, I said, but can you clarify why usury offends God? Philosophy explains that nature derives from divine intellect and art. Usurers scorn nature by placing their hope elsewhere, in their unnatural gains. We continued down the path as dawn approached, the fish constellation rising in the sky. Canto 12. The Minotaur, the 7th circle, the violent, Phlegethon, the violent against their neighbors, the centaurs, tyrants. We reached a steep, rocky descent resembling a landslide caused by an earthquake or collapse. There lay the Minotaur, the infamous beast of Crete, gnashing its teeth in rage when it saw us. My guide shouted, do you think the Duke of Athens is here, who killed you above? Begone, beast! He comes to witness your punishment. The Minotaur raged like a wounded bull, and my guide urged us to hurry down the rocky path, which shifted under our weight. Thoughtfully, I asked, what caused this ruin? He explained, when Christ descended to hell and took the righteous souls, this valley trembled, causing the landslide. Now look ahead. We approach the river of blood where those who harmed others boil. I saw a wide, curving moat, filled with boiling blood, patrolled by armed centaurs like hunters. When they saw us, 3 centaurs approached, bows drawn. One called out, "What torment brings you here?" My guide replied, "We'll answer Chiron, your leader. Calm your haste." He introduced the centaurs, Nessus, Chiron, who raised Achilles, and wrathful Pholus. Thousands of centaurs patrolled, shooting any soul that tried to rise from the blood. Chiron, noticing my movement, remarked, "This one lives." My guide explained, "He lives and must see the dark valley. A heavenly mandate, not theft, brings us here. Grant us a guide to cross the river." Chiron ordered Nessus to guide and carry us. We followed Nessus along the bank, hearing the lamentations of those immersed in boiling blood. He pointed out tyrants like Alexander the Great, Dionysius of Sicily, and Abizo of Este, suffering for their cruelty. As we crossed shallower waters, Nessus showed us more souls, identifying one revered in England. The blood receded to the ankles as we reached the other bank, where Attila and other notorious figures were tormented. Nessus returned, and we moved on, leaving the bloody river behind. Canto 13. The wood of thorns, the harpies, the violent against themselves, suicides, Pier della Vigna, Lano and Jacopo da Sant'Andrea. Before Nessus reached the other side, we entered a dense, pathless forest of gnarled, poison-thorn trees. Hideous harpies, who once chased the Trojans, nested there, their human faces and clawed feet lamenting from the trees. My guide said, "This is the second round. Look around and believe my words." I heard lamentations but saw no people, so I stood confused. My guide instructed me to break a branch from one of the trees. I did, and the trunk cried out, "Why do you harm me? We were men, now turned to trees. Even if we were serpents, you should pity us." From the broken branch, blood and words flowed together. My guide, sympathetic, explained, "If he had believed my verse, he wouldn't have harmed you. Tell him your story, so he may spread your name in the living world." The trunk revealed, I was Pier della Vigna, trusted minister to Emperor Frederick. Envy and lies turned the emperor against me. In despair, I took my own life, and now I suffer here. Tell my story to restore my honor. Moved, I asked the spirit to explain how souls are bound to the trees. He answered, "When a soul violently leaves its body, Minos sends it to this wood. It falls randomly, takes root, and becomes a tree. Harpies feed on the leaves, causing pain and providing an outlet. On Judgment Day, we'll drag our bodies here, but they'll hang from our branches." Suddenly, we were interrupted by a tumult. 2 souls, naked and scratched, fled through the forest, pursued by black, ravenous she-mastiffs. One cried, "Help, death!" while the other, slower, shouted, "Lano, you weren't this fast at the topo justs." The dogs caught and tore apart the slower soul, then carried off his limbs. My guide led me to the weeping bush, which lamented, "Jacopo da Sant'Andrea, why did you use me as a shield? I did nothing to deserve this." My guide asked, "Who are you, speaking from so many wounds?" The bush replied, "I was from Florence, a city changed from its original patron to John the Baptist. I hanged myself, and now suffer here. Please gather my scattered leaves." Moved by pity, I gathered the leaves and returned them to the bush before continuing. Canto 14. The sand waste, the violent against God, Capaneus, the statue of time, and the 4 infernal rivers. Moved by compassion, I gathered the scattered leaves and gave them back to the horse spirit. We reached the boundary between the second and third rounds, where divine justice was visibly harsh. We arrived at a barren plain, encircled by the sorrowful forest and a moat, covered in thick, arid sand like the sands of Cato's deserts. Naked souls were scattered across the plain, some lying flat, some huddled, and others wandering. Most wandered, but those lying down cried out the loudest. Fire fell from the sky like snowflakes, igniting the sand and doubling the torment. The souls continuously flailed their hands to brush off the burning flakes. I noticed a mighty figure lying disdainfully, unaffected by the fire. I asked my guide about him, and the figure, aware of my question, shouted, "I am Cocytus, who defied Jove on earth and still defies him in hell. Let him strike me with all his might, my disdain remains." My guide rebuked him, "Your arrogance adds to your punishment. Your fury is your true torment." We continued along the edge of the burning plain, reaching a red, boiling stream. The stream's bed and banks were stone, and it quenched the flames above it. "This is the notable stream," my guide explained. "It originates from Crete, where the world was pure. A mountain there, once lush, now barren, was Rhea's hiding place for her son. An old man stands on the mountain, facing Rome with his back to Egypt. His head is gold, his arms and chest silver, his lower body brass, and his legs iron, with 1 foot of clay. Cracked and weeping, his tears form Acheron, Styx, Phlegethon, and Cocytus, the rivers of hell." I asked, "If this stream flows from the world above, why do we only see it here?" He explained, "The place is round, and though you've descended far, you haven't seen the entire circle. That's why this seems new to you. Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, is outside hell, where souls cleanse their sins before entering paradise." We left the burning plain, following a safe path along the river, ready for the next challenge. Canto 15. The Violent Against Nature, Brunetto Latini. We continued along a stony path beside the Red River, the mist rising from it protecting us from the flames. The stone dikes reminded me of the ones built by the Flemish to ward off the sea or by the Paduans along the Brenta to protect their homes and fields. We were so far from the forest that I couldn't see it even if I turned around. Suddenly, a group of souls approached us, staring as if recognizing me. One grabbed my hem and cried out, "What a wonder!" I looked down at his burned face and recognized him despite the damage. "Are you here, Ser Brunetto?" I asked. He replied, "Yes, my son. Do you mind if I walk with you a while?" I said, "With all my heart. If my guide allows it, I will sit with you." He answered, "No, walking with me is better. Anyone who stops here lies still for 100 years, unable to fend off the flames." We walked together, and I bowed my head reverently. He asked, "What brings you here before your time? Who is this guiding you?" I explained, "I lost my way in a dark valley. This one appeared and leads me back home." Brunetto Latini said, "Follow your star, and you'll reach a glorious port. If I hadn't died so young, I would have helped you with your great work. But that ungrateful, malicious people from Fiesole will become your enemies. Stay strong, and avoid their vices." I replied, "I am grateful for your guidance. I remember your teachings, and I will honor them as long as I live." He warned me, "Your fate is honored, but Florence is corrupted by new wealth and pride. Avoid their customs and stay true to your path. When you return to the world, remember to speak of me." I promised, and he continued, "Now go on. I must return to my group. Remember my tesoro, in which I still live." Then he turned and joined his companions, running like a winner in a race, leaving me to continue my journey. Canto 16. Guido Guerra, Aldobrandi, and Rustic Cuxai, Cataract of the River of Blood. We heard the sound of falling water, like the humming of bees. 3 souls broke from a group and ran towards us, calling, "Stop. By your garb, you seem to be from our corrupted city." I saw their burn wounds, both old and new, and it pained me to see them. My guide paused and said, "Wait, we should be courteous to them." As they approached, they formed a wheel around us, like wrestlers watching for an opening. One said, "If our state and appearance offend you, let our fame persuade you to tell us who you are." I answered, "I am from Florence, and have always honored your names and deeds." They looked at each other, then one said, "I am Guido Guerra, grandson of Waldrada. This is Tedio Aldobrandi, and this is Jacopo Rustic Cuxai, who suffers most because of his cruel wife." They asked, "Does Florence still hold honor and virtue, or has it fallen into vice?" I replied, "Florence is corrupted by new wealth and pride. It weeps for the loss of its former values." They nodded, saddened by my words, and asked me to speak of them when I returned to the world above. Then they broke their wheel and ran off, disappearing quickly. My guide and I continued towards the sound of the waterfall. Soon, we reached a cliff where a dark, rushing stream fell into the abyss, echoing loudly. I had a cord around my waist, which I used to catch the panther. My guide instructed me to remove it and toss it into the abyss. I did so, and we waited for a response. A shape emerged from the darkness, rising like a diver returning to the surface. I saw a monstrous figure approaching, ready for our next encounter. Canto 17. The violent against art, Geryon, usurers. Behold the beast with the pointed tail, who crosses mountains and shatters walls and weapons. He makes the whole world stink. We reached the beast Geryon, with a man's face but the body of a serpent, covered in colorful, deceptive patterns. My guide spoke to it, and Geryon came closer, landing with his tail coiled behind him. Nearby, on the burning sand, were the souls of the usurers. They sat in misery, swatting at the fiery rain with their hands. Each had a purse hanging from his neck marked with their family crests. I recognized none, but I saw symbols of various noble families. They wept and cursed their fate. My guide returned, saying, "We must descend on Geryon's back. Be brave." I mounted the beast first, then my guide joined me. Geryon uncoiled his tail and took off, flying down the abyss in wide, spiraling circles. The descent was terrifying, with the winds howling and the darkness growing thicker. But Geryon landed us safely at the bottom, and we dismounted. The beast flew off, and we turned to face the next challenge in this dark, infernal journey. Canto 18. The eighth circle, male bulge, the fraudulent, the first bulgia, seducers and panders, venetico caccianimico, Jason, the second bulgia, flatterers, Alessio interminelli, Thais. There is a place in hell called male bulge, entirely made of stone and of a dark iron color, as is the circle that surrounds it. Right in the middle of this evil field, there yawns a vast and deep well, which the structure will describe. The enclosure around the well is circular, between the well and the high, hard bank, and it has 10 distinct valleys at its bottom. As with many moats around castles for protection, forming a figure, this place had the same image. From the base of the precipice, crags projected, intersecting the ditches and moats leading to the well that collects them. We were lowered here from Geryon's back and moved left, with the poet leading and me following. On my right I saw new anguish, new torments, and new wielders of the lash filling the first bulgia. At the bottom, naked sinners faced us this side of the middle, and beyond it, they moved with greater steps. Like the Romans crossing the bridge during the Jubilee year, some went towards the castle and others towards St. Peter's. On both sides along the livid stone, I saw horned demons with great scourges, cruelly beating them from behind. They lifted their legs at the first blows. None waited for the second or third. As I walked, I recognized a face and said, "I'm not mistaken in recognizing this one." So I stopped to observe him, and my sweet guide stopped with me. The scourged one tried to hide, lowering his face, but I said, "You with downcast eyes, if your features are true, you are venetico caccianimico. What brings you to such harsh punishment?" He replied, "I am forced to tell because your clear words bring back the past. I was the one who persuaded Gisela to grant the Marquis's wishes, shameful as it is. I am not the only Bolognese here. This place is full of us. If you need proof, remember our greedy hearts." While he spoke, a demon struck him, saying, "Get gone, pander, there are no women here for coin." I rejoined my guide, and we soon reached a crag projecting from the bank, which we easily climbed. Turning to the right along its ridge, we left the eternal circles. When we reached where it is hollowed out for the scourge to pass, my guide said, "Wait and see the faces of those evil-born souls we haven't yet seen." From the old bridge, we saw those coming from the other side, scourged in the same way. Without asking, my master said, "See that tall one who doesn't shed a tear for his pain, yet retains a royal aspect. That is Jason, who, by his heart and cunning, stole the golden fleece from the Colchians. He deceived Hypsipyle and Lemnos with tokens and ornate words, leaving her pregnant and abandoned. Such sins condemn him, as they do those who deceive in similar ways. We moved on to where the narrow path crosses the second dike, forming a buttress for another arch. From there, we heard moaning and snorting from the next bolgia, where people were beating themselves with their palms. The margins were encrusted with mold from below, waging war on the eyes and nostrils. The bottom was so deep that we had to ascend the arch to see it. Looking down, I saw people covered in filth that seemed to flow from human privies. One head was so filthy I couldn't tell if he was a clerk or layman. He screamed, "Why do you look at me more than the others?" I replied, "Because I remember seeing you with dry hair. You are Alessio Interminii of Lucca." He hit his head and said, "Flatteries brought me here, where my tongue was never satisfied." My guide then said, "Look closer at that filthy, disheveled woman scratching herself. That is Thais the harlot, who replied to her lover, 'Marvelous,' when he asked if she was grateful." With that, we moved on. Canto 19. The third Bolgia, the Simoniacs, Pope Nicholas III. O Simon Magus, and your misled followers, who prostitute the things of God for silver and gold, now the trumpet sounds for you in the third Bolgia. We had climbed to a section of the crag hanging over the middle of the moat. Supreme wisdom, how great you show yourself in heaven, on earth, and in hell, distributing justice. I saw the livid stone filled with round holes, all of one size. They were no larger or smaller than those in my beautiful St. John's baptismal font, one of which I broke to save someone from drowning. Let that be proof to all. From each hole protruded the feet and legs of a sinner, up to the calves, with the rest inside. The soles were on fire, making the joints quiver violently. Who is that one writhing more than the others, his feet sucked by a redder flame? I asked. If you want, I can take you down to him, my guide replied. I agreed, and we descended to the bottom full of holes. The good master didn't let me down until we reached the hole of the lamenting sinner. Whoever you are, upside down like a stake, speak if you can, I said. He cried out, Are you already here, Boniface? By many years the record lied to me. Are you so early satiated with wealth that you took by fraud? I was confused and didn't know how to answer. Virgilius said, Tell him, I am not he whom you think. I did as told, and the spirit writhed, sighing, What do you want from me? If you care to know who I am, know I wore the great mantle and was eager to advance my kin, pocketing wealth above and here. Beneath my head, others are dragged down who preceded me in simony, lying flat in the rock's fissure. I will fall further when the one I mistook you for arrives. I've been here longer than he will stay, for after him will come one of even fouler deed from the west, a lawless pastor fit to cover us both. He will be a new Jason, as pliant as his king. I replied boldly, Tell me how much treasure our Lord demanded of St. Peter before giving him the keys? Nothing but follow me. Peter and the rest asked for neither silver nor gold when Matthias was chosen. Stay here, punish justly, guarding your ill-gotten gains. Your avarice afflicts the world, trampling the good and elevating the depraved. The evangelist saw her who sits on many waters fornicating with kings, the same who received power from the 10 horns. You've made a god of gold and silver, worshipping many idols. Constantine's marriage dower caused more harm than his conversion. While I sang to him, his feet struggled violently. My leader seemed pleased, listening intently. He lifted me with both arms, carried me to the summit of the arch, and tenderly set me down on the steep, uneven crag. Another valley was unveiled to me. Canto 20. The fourth Bolgia, soothsayers, Amphiaraus, Tiresias, Aruns, Manto, Eriphilus, Michael Scott, Guido Bonatti, and Estent. A new pain requires new verses for the 20th canto of the first song, about the submerged. I was eager to peer into the uncovered depth, bathed in tears of agony. I saw people in the circular valley, silent and weeping, moving at the pace of a funeral procession. As I looked lower, I saw each one distorted from chin to chest, with their faces turned towards their backs. They had to walk backwards since looking forward was denied. Some might be turned awry by palsy, but I had never seen it or believed it possible. Reader, if God lets you gather fruit from this reading, think how I couldn't keep my face unmoistened when I saw our own image distorted, with tears bathing their hind parts. I wept, leaning on a crag, so my escort said, "Are you two of the other fools? Pity lives here when it's dead. Who is more reprobate than one who pities divine doom? Lift your head and see for whom the earth opened before the Thebans, causing them to cry, 'Where are you rushing, Amphiros?' He fell as far as Minos, who judges all. See how he made a bosom of his shoulders. Tiresias, who changed from male to female, then back by striking serpents, is here. Aruns, who backs Tiresias, had a cave in the hills of Luni to observe the stars and see. Manto, who wandered through many lands, settled in the marshy area of my birth. After her father's death and the fall of Thebes, she found a place to practice her arts and lived there with her servants. The men around built a city over her bones, naming it Mantua after her. Cassilodes' stupidity reduced its population. I said, "Master, your words are so certain they satisfy me. Tell me if anyone noteworthy passes." He replied, "The one with the black beard and swarthy shoulders was an augur with Calchas, setting the moment to sever the first cable in Aulis. Eriphilus, who persuaded the Greeks to leave for Troy, is here. So is Michael Scott, who knew magical illusions. Guido Bonatti and Estent are here, regretting leaving their crafts for fortune-telling. See those who abandon their needles and looms for spells. Come now, for the moon rises, marking the end of our journey." Thus we walked on. Canto 21. The fifth Bolgia, corrupt politicians, the elder of Santa Zita, Malebranche. From bridge to bridge, discussing things my comedy does not sing of, we came to the summit and halted to behold another fissure of Malebranche and the vain laments it held. I saw it was incredibly dark. In the Venetians' arsenal, during winter, they boil sticky pitch to repair their damaged ships because they can't sail. Instead, some build new vessels, some recaulk old ones, some hammer at the prow or stern, some make oars, others twist cords, and others mend the sails. Similarly, not by fire but by divine art, a thick pitch boiled below, coating the banks on all sides. I saw this but nothing within it except bubbles rising and bursting. While I gazed fixedly below, my leader shouted, "Beware, beware," and pulled me to him from where I stood. I turned around impatiently, wanting to see what I should avoid, feeling sudden terror and needing to escape. I saw behind us a black devil running along the crag towards us. How fierce he looked, and how ruthless his actions seemed, with open wings and light feet. His high, pointed shoulders carried a sinner by the haunches, clutching the sinews of his feet. "O Malebranche," he shouted, "here's one of the elders of Saint Zita. Dunk him, for I return for more from that town, full of corrupt politicians except for Banturo. No money changes no into yes there." He hurled the sinner down, turned around, and never was a mastiff released so quickly to chase a thief. The sinner sank and rose again face downward, but the demons under the bridge cried, "Here, the holy face counts for nothing. Swim differently than in the Serchio. If you want no hooks, stay submerged." They grabbed him with more than 100 hooks, saying, "Here you dance covered so you can secretly steal if you can." Just like cooks make their scullions push the meat down into the middle of the cauldron with hooks so it doesn't float, the demons submerged the sinner. My good master said, "Crouch behind a jagged rock so you won't be seen, and don't be afraid of any outrage done to me. I know these things because I've been in such a scuffle before." He passed beyond the bridge's head, arriving at the sixth bank with a steadfast front. With the same fury and uproar, as dogs leap out on a beggar suddenly begging, they issued from beneath the bridge, turning all their grappling irons on him. But he cried out, "None of you be malicious. Before you use your hooks on me, let one of you step forward to hear me, then decide to hook me." They all shouted, "Let Malakota go," and one stepped forward while the rest stood still. He approached, saying, "What's the use of this?" My master replied, "Do you think, Malakota, that seeing me here, I am safe from all your tricks without divine will and auspicious fate? Let me pass, for it is willed in heaven that I show this savage road to another." Malakota's arrogance was humbled. He dropped his grapnel at his feet and said to the others, "Don't strike him." My guide called to me, You who crouch among the bridge's splinters, come back to me safely now." I quickly returned to him, and all the devils advanced, making me fear they wouldn't keep their pact. Just like soldiers who were afraid when leaving Caprona under a truce, seeing themselves among so many enemies, I pressed close to my leader and didn't take my eyes off their malicious faces. They lowered their hooks, whispering if they should hit me on the rump, and another answered, "Yes, see that you nick him with it." But the demon speaking with my guide turned quickly, saying, "Be quiet, Scarmiglione." He told us, "You can't go further on this crag because the sixth arch is shattered at the bottom. If you wish to proceed, follow this path. Near another crag is a path." He sent some of his men to check if anyone was out of the pitch, instructing them not to be vicious. He called out, "Alicino and Calcabrina, Cagnazzo, Barbaricia, guide the 10. Come, Libicaco and Dragignazzo, Suriato, Graffiacane, Farfarello, and Mad Rubicant, search around the boiling pitch and keep these safe to the next crag." I asked Master, "What do I see?" "Let's go without an escort if you know how. I don't trust them." He replied, "Don't fear. Let them gnash their teeth. They do this for those boiling wretches." They wheeled around along the left-hand dike, thrusting their tongues between their teeth toward their leader for a signal. He made a trumpet of his rump. Canto 22. Ciampolo, Friar Gomita, and Michael Zanch. I've seen horsemen breaking camp, starting a storm, making musters, and retreating. I've seen Von couriers in our times, foragers go forth, tournaments struck, and just run. Sometimes trumpets and bells, kettledrums, and castle signals rang out, but never did I see horsemen or infantry move to a bagpipe's uncouth sound. We traveled with 10 demons, savage company, but like saints in church and gluttons in a tavern, my attention was on the boiling pitch, to see the conditions and the people burned within. Like dolphins showing their backs to mariners to signal safety, some sinners would show their backs to alleviate their pain, then hide faster than lightning. Like frogs in a ditch with only their muzzles out, hiding their feet and bulk, the sinners stood around. But when Barbaricia neared, they ducked under the boiling pitch. I saw, and my heart shudders, one sinner who remained too long like a frog, grabbed by Graffiacane by the hair and pulled up like an otter. I knew their names from when they were chosen and heard them call each other. They all shouted for Rubicant to claw and flay him. I said, "Master, find out who this luckless wretch is who's fallen into their hands." My leader approached the sinner, who said, "I was born in Navarre. My mother placed me as a servant to a lord after being born to a dissolute father. I served good King Thibaut and practiced barratry, for which I pay in this heat." Suriato, with tusks like a boar, ripped him. Barbaricia hugged him, saying, "Stand aside while I enfork him." He turned to my master, saying, "Ask if you wish to know more before someone destroys him." My guide asked if he knew any Latian in the pitch, and the sinner replied, "I recently left one nearby. I wish I was still covered with him. I wouldn't fear claw or hook." Libicaco said, "We've borne too much," and grabbed his arm with a grapnel, tearing a tendon. Dragignazzo tried to pounce on his legs, and their decurion turned with an evil look. When they calmed down, my conductor asked who the sinner was. He replied, "Friar Gomita of Galura, a vessel of fraud, who handled his lord's enemies well, taking money to let them go. He excelled in barratry. Don Michael Zanch of Lagadoro is with him, and they never tire of gossip." I watched as one gritted his teeth, fearing more harm. The Grand Provost turned to Farfarello, rolling his eyes to strike, saying, "Stand aside, malicious bird." The terror-stricken sinner offered to bring Tuscans or Lombards if the Malebranche ceased a little, promising to make 7 come when he whistled. Cagnazzo lifted his muzzle, shaking his head, saying, "Hear the trick to throw himself down." The sinner, cunning, replied, "I have more snares." Alichin couldn't resist, saying, "If you dive, I won't chase, but I'll beat my wings above the pitch." He let the height and bank be a shield to see if he could outwit them. They turned their eyes, the Navarrese timed it well, planted his feet, and leaped, freeing himself from their plan. Each one felt shame, especially the one who caused the defeat, who cried, "You're overtaken." But wings couldn't outstrip fear. The other went under and aimed his breast upward. Like a duck diving when a falcon nears, Calcabrina followed, hoping the sinner escaped to fight. When the sinner disappeared, Calcabrina turned on his companion, grappling above the moat. The other was a fierce sparhawk, and both fell into the boiling pitch. The heat acted quickly, but rising was impossible as their wings were coated. Barbaricia made 4 fly to the other side with gaffs to retrieve them from the crust, and we left them busily at work. Canto 23. The 6th Bolgia, Hypocrites, Catalano and Lodringo, Caiaphas. Silently and alone, without any company, we walked, one in front and the other behind, like the minor friars. My thoughts were on Aesop's fable because of our current situation, where he talks about the frog and the mouse. For Emo and Isa are not more alike than this one is to that if you connect the beginning and the end with a steady mind. One thought led to another, doubling my initial fear. I pondered, they mock us with such injury and scorn that it must annoy them greatly. If anger is combined with ill will, they will come after us more ruthlessly than a dog chasing a hare. Terror made my hair stand on end, and I was alert when I said, Master, if you don't hide yourself and me quickly, I fear the Malebranche. I imagine them behind us, I already feel them. And he replied, If I were made of leaded glass, your outward image wouldn't attract me more than I imprint your inner thoughts. Just now, your thoughts came into my own with a similar attitude and face, so I made one single decision from both. If the right bank slopes so we can descend to the next Bolgia, we will escape from the imagined chase. Before he finished his opinion, I saw them coming with outstretched wings, not far off, ready to seize us. My leader suddenly picked me up like a mother who wakes to a noise and sees flames near her, grabs her child, and runs without stopping, caring more for him than herself, clothed only in a shift. He carried me down from the top of the hard bank, prone to the rock that forms one side of the other Bolgia walls. Never did water run so swiftly through a sluice to turn a mill wheel, as my master went down that border, carrying me on his breast like a son, not just a companion. We had barely reached the ravine below when they reached the hill above us. But he wasn't afraid, because Providence had assigned them to the 5th moat, taking away their power to leave. Below, we found a painted crowd, moving slowly, weeping, and looking tired and defeated. They wore mantles with hoods low over their eyes, fashioned like the ones made for monks in Cologne. Outside, they were gilded to dazzle. Inside, they were all lead and so heavy that Frederick used to make straw ones. Oh, how tiring these mantles are forever! We turned left again with them, listening to their sad complaints, but they moved so slowly because of the weight that we were always in new company with each step. I said to my leader, Find someone known by name or deed, and look around as we go. And one who understood Tuscan called from behind, Stop, you who run through this dark air. Maybe you'll get what you want from me. My leader turned and said, Wait, and then follow his pace. I stopped and saw 2 hurrying to be with me, but the burden and narrow path delayed them. When they arrived, they scanned me with sidelong glances without speaking, then turned to each other and said, He seems alive by the way he breathes. And if they are dead, how do they go without the heavy cloak? Then one said to me, Tuscan, who have come to the college of miserable hypocrites, don't disdain to tell us who you are. I replied, I was born and raised in the great town on the fair Arno River, and I'm still in the body I always had. But who are you, with such sorrow on your faces? What pain makes you suffer so? One answered, These orange cloaks are so heavy with lead that they creak like this under their weight. We were joyful friars from Bologna. I'm Catalano, and he's Lodringo. Both of us were chosen by your city, usually taking one man for peacekeeping, but we were so bad that it still shows around Gardingo. I started to say, Oh friars, you're evil, but stopped when I saw one crucified on the ground with 3 stakes. When he saw me, he twisted and groaned, blowing into his beard. Catalano said this one advised the Pharisees that it was good to sacrifice one man for the people. He's crucified here and must feel everyone's weight who passes. His father-in-law and others of that council suffer the same. I saw Virgil marvel at the one so vilely stretched on the cross. Then he asked the friar if there was a way out on the right without needing the black angels to help. The friar answered, Closer than you hope. There's a rock that crosses all the valleys, except this one where it's broken. You can climb the ruin that slopes down and rises at the bottom." My leader thought for a while, then said, "The demon who hooks the sinners lied about this." The friar replied, "I've heard many devil's tricks in Bologna, and among them, that he's a liar and the father of lies." My leader then walked on with great strides, somewhat angry, and I followed closely behind him. Canto 24. The seventh Bolgia Thieves, Vanni Fucci. In that part of the young year when the sun warms his locks beneath Aquarius, and the nights are nearly as long as the days, when the frost copies the whiteness of her sister on the ground, but it doesn't last long, the farmer, whose fodder is running out, gets up, sees the fields all white, beats his sides, and goes back inside, lamenting like a poor wretch who doesn't know what to do. Then he returns and hope revives, seeing the world has changed in a short time, and takes his shepherds crook to drive his little lambs to pasture. Similarly, the master filled me with alarm when I saw his disturbed forehead, but soon he applied the remedy. When we reached the ruined bridge, the leader turned to me with that sweet look I first saw at the mountain's foot. He opened his arms after considering the ruin, looked carefully, and grabbed me. Just like someone who acts and thinks ahead, he lifted me towards the summit of a huge rock, saying, "Grab that one next, but test if it will hold you first." This was no way for someone in a cloak. We struggled to climb from jag to jag. If the ascent hadn't been shorter than the other, I would have been exhausted. But because Maelbalge slopes towards the deepest well, the structure of each valley means one bank rises and the other sinks. Eventually, we reached the point where the last stone breaks off. I was so out of breath when we got up that I could go no further and sat down. "Now you must shake off sloth," my master said, "for sitting on down or under a quilt doesn't bring fame, and without fame, life leaves no more trace than smoke in air or foam in water. So get up, conquer the pain with spirit that overcomes every battle if it doesn't sink under the body's weight. You have a longer way to climb. It's not enough to have left these behind. Let it benefit you to understand me." I got up, feeling stronger, and said, "Let's go, for I am strong and bold." We climbed along the jagged, narrow, difficult crag, steeper than the last. I talked to avoid seeming exhausted, and a voice from the next moat came out, barely forming words. I don't know what it said, though I was over the arch passing there, but it seemed angry. I bent down, but my eyes couldn't see the bottom for the dark, so I said, "Master, see if you can get to the next round. Let's descend the wall, because I can't understand from here." He replied, "I won't respond except by action. Modest requests should be followed by deeds in silence." We descended the bridge at its head, where it connects with the 8th bank, and I saw the Bolgia clearly. There, a terrible throng of serpents of monstrous kinds still chills my blood to remember. Let Libya boast no more of her sands, for if she breeds Calidri, Jaculi, and Fairy, Senkri and Amphispina, either Ethiopia nor the Red Sea shows so many or so deadly. Among this cruel crowd, people were running naked and terrified, without hope of hiding or escape. Their hands were bound behind with serpents, heads and tails entwined in front. One serpent darted out and struck a man on our side, at the neck where it meets the shoulders. Instantly, he took fire and burned, falling to ashes and reforming into himself. This is how the phoenix dies and is reborn after 500 years, feeding on incense and amomum tears, nard, and myrrh for its last shroud. The sinner rose like someone who falls by demon force or obstruction that binds, looking around bewildered and sighing from the suffering. God's justice. How severe it is, pouring down such blows and vengeance. The guide asked him who he was, and he replied, "I came from Tuscany recently into this cruel gorge. A beastly life pleased me, not a human one. I'm Vanni Fucci, beast, and Pistoia was my worthy den." I asked the guide to tell him to stay and ask what crime brought him here, as I once knew him as a man of wrath and blood. The sinner, hearing this, turned to me with a face of shame and said, "It pains me more that you see me in this misery than when I was taken from life. I can't deny what you ask. I am here because I robbed the sacristy of its ornaments, and falsely blamed another. But to pain you more, if you escape these dark places, listen to my prophecy. Pistoia first will thin its black party, Then Florence will renew its men and laws. Mars will draw a vapor up from Val di Magra, wrapped in storm clouds, and over Campo Pison will be the battle, shattering the mist and striking each white. Canto 25. The seventh Bolgia, Theft, Vanni Fucci, Agnello and others. After his words, the thief raised his hands and made obscene gestures, shouting, "Take that, God aimed at you." From that moment, the serpents became my friends. One coiled around his neck as if to silence him, and another bound his arms, so tightly he couldn't move. Pistoia, oh Pistoia! Why don't you burn yourself to ashes and perish, since you surpass your ancestors in evil? Through all the circles of hell, I saw no spirit so proud against God, not even him who fell from Thebes' walls. He fled without another word, and I saw an enraged centaur shouting, "Where is the scoffer?" I don't think Maremma has as many serpents as he had all along his back, up to his head. A dragon with open wings lay on his shoulders, setting fire to everything it touched. My master said that one is Cocytus, who created lakes of blood under Mount Aventine. He doesn't travel with his brothers because of his fraudulent theft of the great herd near him. Hercules beat him with his club until he stopped, but he felt only 10 of 100 blows. As he spoke, 3 spirits came underneath us, unknown to me or my leader until they shouted, "Who are you?" Our story paused, and we focused on them alone. I didn't know them, but as often happens by chance, one named another, exclaiming, "Where is Ciantha?" I signaled to the leader, raising my finger from chin to nose. If you are slow to believe what I say, reader, it's no wonder. I hardly believe it myself. As I held my brows raised at them, a 6-footed serpent darted out and latched onto one. With middle feet, it wrapped around his belly. With front feet, it seized his arms and bit through both cheeks. The hind feet stretched along his thighs, and the tail went between and up behind his reins. Ivy never fastened to a tree so tightly as this horrible creature entwined the other. They stuck together like melted wax, their colors blending. Either seemed what they were. As brown spreads on white paper before the flame, turning neither black nor white, the other two cried out, "Oh, Agnello, how you change! Now you're neither two nor one." The 2 heads merged into one, forming a new face from 2. The 4 limbs turned into 2 arms, legs and belly fused into a shape never seen before. Every original feature vanished. The twisted image was 2 and none, slowly moving away. As a lizard under the hot summer scourge darts across the road, a small, fiery, peppercorn-colored serpent appeared near the others' bellies. It struck one where food first enters, then fell before him. The one struck gazed silently at it, motionless like someone asleep or feverish. They stared at each other, the wound and the mouth smoking violently, the smoke mingling. Let Lucan be silent about wretched Sabellus and Nicidius, and Ovid about Cadmus and Arethusa. Their tales of transformations are nothing compared to this. The serpent's tail split into a fork, and the wounded's feet drew together. Their legs and thighs adhered, merging into one in a short time. The serpent's skin became elastic, the man's hardened. The arms withdrew into the armpits, and the serpent's short legs lengthened as much as the man's shrank. The hind feet twisted together, becoming what men hide, and the man grew 2 legs. While both exhaled smoke, changing colors and growing hair on one and losing it on the other, one stood up, and the other fell, their faces never turning away. The one standing drew his face towards his temples, where excess matter formed ears from hollow cheeks. What remained became a nose, and lips thickened appropriately. The one lying pushed his muzzle forward, drawing ears into his head like a snail's horns. The whole tongue, once capable of speech, split, while the forked tongue in the other sealed, and the smoke ceased. The soul transformed into a reptile hissed away down the valley, the other spitting as he spoke. Then he turned his new shoulders, saying, "Let Buso crawl as I have done along this road." Thus I saw the 7th ballast shift and reshape, my excuse being the novelty if my pen transgresses. Even if my eyes were bewildered and my mind dismayed, I clearly saw Puccio Ciancato, who was the only unchanged companion among the 3 at the beginning. The other was the one Gavil mourns. Canto 26. The 8th Bolgia, fraudulent counselors, Ulysses and Diamond, Ulysses' last voyage. Rejoice, Florence, for your greatness spreads over sea and land, and throughout hell your name is known. Among the thieves I found 5 of your citizens, bringing shame to me and no credit to your virtue. But if the truth is revealed tomorrow morning, your neighbors will marvel, for you will exile yourself. If what I saw in my mind brings you fame, I wouldn't reveal it to avoid leaving a bitter record. If harsh truths spoken by a friend cause no harm, my words won't be harsh or cruel. We climbed along the ridge and stood alone at its summit, turning right where the circle bends, and I saw a fire full of malice affecting the people there, filling me with wonder. Like someone watching bears in battle, suddenly seeing them fight, I saw arms of fire, encircling the lake, making me feel trapped. I asked the good master, "Who are these crouching people?" He replied, "Those who suffer more severe punishments endure worse pains." He said, "Look at them in the flame at the bottom. They are tormented so, I can't say which one." I said, "Master, I want to know what I see if it's worth the trouble. Who makes such a fire?" He said, "Ulysses and Diamond lie beneath this fire. Together they run to vengeance as they did to wrath. They groan for the horse ambush that led to the Romans' rise. They weep for their cursed craft, for stealing the Palladium, for the rash venture that caused Didamia's death, and cruelly avenged her baby Achilles. They howl for Ulysses' rash journey, who overcame Circe, lost his comrades, and then charmed him long." I said, "If they can speak within those sparks, I pray you, Master, let me stay until the horned flame comes here. See that I bend for you." He replied, "Your prayer is praiseworthy, and I accept it, but restrain your tongue. Let me speak, for I understand what you desire. They may disdain your speech because they were Greeks." When the flame reached the place where my leader deemed time and place fit, I heard him speak to them, "O you, twofold within one fire, if I merited of you while living, if I merited of you much or little when I wrote the lofty verses, do not move but let one of you tell where, being lost, he went to die." The larger horn of the ancient flame began to shake, murmuring like one weary. The top moved here and there like a speaking tongue, emitting a voice saying, "When I left Circe, who kept me near Gaeta for over a year before Aeneas named it, either love for my son, nor reverence for my aged father, nor Penelope's love could overcome my desire to gain experience of the world in human vices and worth. I ventured with one ship and a small loyal crew. We saw both shores as far as Spain, Morocco, Sardinia, and other islands. Old and slow, we reached the narrow pass where Hercules set his landmarks. I left Seville on the right and Ceuta behind. "O brothers," I said, "who have faced 100,000 perils to reach the west, don't deny this last vigil of our senses to follow the sun into the unpeopled world. Remember your origin. You were not made to live like brutes but to pursue virtue and knowledge." This brief speech made my companions so eager that I could barely hold them back. Turning our stern to the morning, we made wings with our oars, always gaining on the left. Night saw the other pole with all its stars, and ours so low it barely rose from the ocean floor. 5 times the moon rekindled and quenched its light since we began our arduous journey when we saw a distant mountain, the tallest I'd ever seen. We were glad but soon turned to weeping, for a whirlwind rose from the new land, striking the ship's front. 3 times it whirled her with all the waters. At the 4th, the stern lifted, the prow sank, and the sea closed over us. Canto 27. The 8th Bolgia, fraudulent counselors, Guido de Montefeltro. The flame stood erect and quiet, no longer speaking, and departed with the gentle poet's leave when another flame followed, making us turn our eyes to its tip by a confused sound. Like the Sicilian bull, which bellowed first with the lament of its creator, the brass bull appeared transfixed with agony. At first, the words had no way out of the fire, converting to its own language, but then, rising through the point, vibrating as the tongue passed, we heard, "O you, who spoke Lombard, saying, 'Now go your way, I urge you no more, because I come a little late, don't mind staying and speaking with me. You see it doesn't bother me, and I am burning. If you've recently fallen from that sweet Latian land where I committed my sins, say, do the Romagnoli have peace or war?' I was from the mountains between Urbino and the source of the Tiber. I was still bent and listening when my guide nudged me, saying, 'Speak, This one is a Latian. I, ready to reply, began, O soul, concealed below, Romania is always at war within its tyrants, but there is no open war now. Ravenna stands as it has for years. The eagle of Polenta broods there, covering Servia. The city that resisted long and made a bloody heap of the French lies again under the green paws. Verrocchio's old and new mastiff, who mishandled Montagna, still uses their teeth to drill. The cities of Lamone and Salerno are governed by the lioncel of the White Lair, who changes sides with the seasons, and the city on the Savio's flank lives between tyranny and freedom. Now tell us who you are. Be not more stubborn than the others, so your name holds honor in the world. The flame roared a bit more, moving its sharp point this way and that, then said, If I believed my reply was to one returning to the world, this flame would stay still. But since none return from this depth, if I hear true, I answer without fear of infamy. I was a man of arms, then a cordelier, believing this would atone. It would have worked, but the high priest, may he suffer, returned me to my old sins. Let me tell you how. While I was still flesh and bone, I acted not as a lion but a fox. I knew and practiced all covert ways, spreading my fame. When I reached old age, I repented and confessed, surrendering. Ah, woe is me! It would have saved me, but the modern Pharisees' leader had a war near Lateran, not with Saracens or Jews but Christians. His enemies were Christians, none had conquered Acre or traded in the Sultan's land, nor regarded high office or sacred orders, nor my cord, which made its wearers leaner. Like Constantine sought Sylvester to cure his leprosy in Soracte, this one sought me to cure his pride. He asked my counsel, and I was silent, seeing his inebriate words. He said, Fear not, I absolve you, instruct me how to raise Palestrina. I have the power to lock and unlock heaven, as you know. My predecessor didn't value the keys. His arguments urged me on where silence was worse. I said, Father, since you washed me of that sin, I must now fall into. The promise short with long fulfillment will make you triumph. Francis came for me after I died, but a black cherubim said, Don't take him. He must go down to my servants for his fraudulent advice, since he can't repent and will simultaneously, he remains. O wretched me! I shuddered when he seized me, saying, Did you think I was a logician? He took me to Minos, who rapped his tail 8 times and bit it in rage, saying, This one is a thief's fire culprit, and I was lost. The flame lamented and writhed as it left. We passed on, my guide and I, over the crag to another arch covering the moat, where discord sours pay their toll. Canto 28. The 9th Bulgia, sours of scandal and schism, Muhammad and Ali, Pierre de Medicina, Curio, Mosca, and Bertrand de Born. Who could ever describe the full extent of the blood and wounds I saw, even with unlimited words? Each tongue would certainly fall short due to our limited speech and memory, unable to comprehend so much. If all the people lamenting for their blood in Puglia, shed by the Romans in the lingering war that made such famous spoils, as Livy recorded, who didn't err, those feeling the agony of blows resisting Robert Guiscard, and all the rest whose bones still lie at Ceperano, where each Apulian was a renegade, and at Tagliacozzo, where the unarmed old Alardo won, and one pierced through, one lopped off, could show. It wouldn't compare to the horror of the 9th Bulgia. A cask losing staves was never shattered like one I saw, ripped from chin to where one breaks wind. Between his legs hung his entrails. His heart was visible, and the dismal sack that makes excrement. While I stared, he looked at me, opened his chest with his hands, and said, See how I tear myself. See how mutilated is Muhammad. Ali weeps in front of me, cleft from forelock to chin. All those here spread scandal and schism in life, and are now cleft as you see. A devil splits us cruelly, repairing us with the falchion's edge as we circle the road, our wounds close before we pass him again. Who are you, pondering on the crag, perhaps delaying the pain for your sins? My master replied, He's not dead yet, nor does guilt bring him here to be tormented, but to gain full experience, I must guide him through hell, from circle to circle. This is true as I speak. Over 100 stopped to look at me, forgetting their torment in wonder. Muhammad said, Tell Fradalcino to arm himself soon, or he'll follow me here, needing supplies, or the Novaries will win, not easily otherwise. After lifting one foot to leave, Muhammad spoke and stretched it forward. Another, throat pierced, nose cut off, one ear left, stared with the others, then opened his blood-red gullet, saying, "You, guiltless and once seen in Latian land, if I'm not mistaken, remember Pier de Medcina. Tell the best two of Fano, Messer Guido and Angiolello, that if foresight isn't in vain, they'll be cast from their ship and drowned near Catolica, betrayed by a one-eyed tyrant. Neptune never saw such a crime, either from pirates nor Argives. That traitor, who holds the land someone here would fast from, will lure them to parley and do so they won't need prayers against Folker's wind." I asked, "Show me and declare, who is this person of the bitter vision, if you want me to report about you?" He laid his hand on a companion's jaw, opening his mouth, crying, "This is he speaks not." Banished, he submerged every doubt in Caesar, affirming the armed delay. Curio, who boldly spoke, appeared to me with a slit windpipe, tongue severed. One with both hands cut off, lifting stumps in the murky air, his face bloodied, cried, "Remember Mosca too, who said, 'A thing done has an end,' which seated Tuscan sorrow." I added, "And death to your clan." He left, adding woe to woe, like a sad, crazed person. I stayed to watch the crowd and saw a trunk without a head walking like the rest. Holding its severed head by the hair like a lantern, it gazed at us and said, "Oh, misery! Behold my severe penalty, you who breathe seeing the dead, is any as great as this?" It raised the head close to us, saying, "Know that I am Bertram de Born, who gave the young king evil counsel, making father and son rebellious. Achitophel did no more with Absalom and David. Because I parted those united, I bear my brain apart from its root in this trunk. This is my just punishment." Canto 29, the 10th Bulgia, Falsifiers, Alchemists, Griffolino d'Arezzo and Capocchio. My eyes were so overwhelmed by the many people and different wounds that they wanted to stop and weep. But Virgil said, "Why do you still stare? Why are you fixed on those mournful, mutilated shades? You didn't act like this at the other valleys. Remember, if you think about it, that this valley winds for 22 miles, and now the moon is beneath our feet. Our time is short, and there is much more to see than this. If you understood why I was looking, you might have let me stay longer," I replied, following him as he started to leave. I added, "In that cave where I was so focused, I believe there's a spirit of my blood lamenting the sin that cost so much down there." Then my master said, "Don't let your thoughts be distracted by him anymore. Look elsewhere and let him stay. I saw him below the little bridge, pointing at you and threatening fiercely with his finger. I heard him call Jerry del Bello. You were so distracted by him who held Altaforte, you didn't look that way, and he left. My guide, his violent death, which hasn't been avenged by anyone sharing in the shame, made him scornful. So, I imagine he left without speaking to me, making me pity him more," I said. We talked as far as the first place where the next valley was visible down to the bottom, if there were more light. When we were right over the last cloister of Mailbalge, so that we could see its lay brothers, various lamentations pierced me, arrows of compassion, making me cover my ears. Imagine all the diseases in one ditch from the hospitals of Valdichiana, Maremma, and Sardinia between July and September. That's what it was like here, with a stench from rotting limbs. We descended on the furthest bank from the long crag, on the left hand, and I could see better down towards the bottom where justice infallibly punishes forgers. It was a sad sight like the one in Aegina when pestilence killed all the people, down to the little worm, and they were later restored from ants, as poets say. The spirits lay in heaps, languishing. Some were on their bellies, others on their backs, and others crawled along the dismal road. We moved step by step, silent, watching the sick who couldn't lift themselves. I saw two sitting, leaning against each other, covered with scabs from head to foot. I never saw a stable boy use a cricombe on a horse as eagerly as they used their nails on themselves, scratching at the rage of itching they couldn't soothe. The nails dragged down the scabs like a knife on fish scales. "Oh, you, who use your fingers like pincers," my leader began, "and now and then make them pincers, tell me if any Latian is among these." We are Latians, both of us, one replied, but who are you? I am one who descends with this living man through hell, showing him its depths, said my guide. At that, they broke their mutual support and turned to me, trembling, as did others who heard him. My good master gathered them to me, saying, tell them whatever you wish. So your memory may survive in the world above. Say who you are and what people you come from, I began. Don't let your fall punishment make you afraid to show yourselves. I am from Arezzo, one replied. Albert of Siena had me burned, but not for what brought me here. I jokingly told him I could fly, and he, with little wit, wanted me to show him. Because I couldn't be a Daedalus for him, he had me burned. But for alchemy, which I practiced, Minos condemned me here. Now was there ever a more vain people than the Sienese? I asked the poet. No, certainly not the French, replied the other leper. Except Strica, who knew how to spend moderately, and Niccolò, who first discovered the luxurious use of cloves. And the band among whom Cocytus squandered his vineyards and woods, and where Abaliato showed his wit. But know who seconds you against the Sienese. Look closely at me and you'll see I am Capocchio, who falsified metals by alchemy. You should remember how I mimic nature skillfully. Canto 30 other falsifiers or forgers, Johnny Schicchi, Myrrha, Master Adam, Potiphar's wife, and Sinon of Troy. It was when Juno was enraged with Theban blood over Semele, making Athamas so mad he saw his wife and children as wild animals, seized his son Lurchus, and dashed him on a rock, while his wife drowned herself with the other child. It was also when fortune destroyed the arrogance of the Trojans, crushing their king and kingdom. Hecuba, captive and sorrowful, saw Polyxena lifeless and Polydorus on the shore. Driven mad by grief, she barked like a dog. Yet neither the furies of Thebes nor the Trojan were as cruel as I saw two pale, naked shades biting each other like wild boars released from their pen. One seized Capocchio by the neck with its teeth, dragging him so his belly scraped the ground. The Aretine, trembling, said to me, that mad spirit is Johnny Schicchi, who attacks others in his rage. I asked him, who is the other before it leaves? That is the ghost of Myrrha, who falsely seduced her father. She imitated another form, like Johnny Schicchi who took on the form of Birso Donati to make a false will. After they passed, I turned to see the other cursed souls. I saw one shaped like a lute, if he were only missing his groin. Dropsy had so disfigured his limbs with fluid that his face didn't match his belly. His lips were held apart like a person in a fever from thirst. O you, who suffer without any torment, why are you in this world of woe? He asked us. Behold the misery of Master Adam. I once had everything I wished, but now I crave a drop of water. The streams from the hills of Casentino stand before me, drying me more than my disease. Justice here draws from the place where I sinned, making me sigh more. I counterfeited the currency stamped with the Baptist and was burned for it. If I could see Guido, Alessandro, or their brother here, I wouldn't trade the sight for the Branda's fountain. One is already here if the mad shades speak true. But I am trapped. If I could move an inch in 100 years, I'd seek them among this squalid crowd. I asked, who are the two poor wretches smoking like wet hands in winter, lying near you? They were here when I fell into this chasm and haven't moved since. One is the false woman who accused Joseph, the other is Sinon, the Greek from Troy. They reek from acute fever, he replied. One, perhaps annoyed at being named, punched his hardened belly, sounding like a drum. Master Adam punched him back, saying, though I can't move my heavy limbs, I still have an arm for such needs. When you went to the fire, you weren't so ready, but you were when you coined false money, Sinon retorted. You're right, but you weren't truthful at Troy when questioned, Adam replied. If I lied, you falsified coins, said Sinon. I'm here for one crime, you for more than any demon. Remember the Trojan horse, Persia, Adam replied. May your thirst torment you forever. May your swollen belly and the putrid water before your eyes torment you, Sinon shot back. Listening to them, I was wholly absorbed when my master scolded me. Look, we're about to quarrel. I turned to him, filled with shame, unable to speak, wishing it was a dream. My master said, less shame washes away greater faults than yours. Don't be sad. Remember, I am always with you if you encounter disputes. It's a base desire to want to hear them. Canto 31. The giants, Nimrod, Ephialtes, and Antaeus. One and the same tongue first wounded me, then offered medicine. I hear that once Achilles' spear did the same. We turned our backs on the wretched valley, crossing the bank in silence. It was neither night nor day, and I could barely see ahead, but I heard a loud horn, louder than any thunder. It drew my eyes to one place, where I seemed to see many lofty towers. What town is this? I asked my master. He replied, you mistake distance for towers. They are giants in the well, surrounding the bank from the waist down. As the fog clears, revealing what was hidden, I saw more clearly and felt fear. The giants encircled the well like towers, each with a body turreted from the waist up. Jove still threatens them from the heavens. I saw one giant's face, shoulders, chest, and arms. Nature did well to stop making such creatures after these, for when intellect, evil will, and power combine, no fortress can stand against them. His face seemed as long and large as the pinecone at St. Peter's in Rome. His other bones were proportional. 30 great palms measured from his hair to his middle, which was aproned by the well's edge. Raffle my emek izabi almi, he roared. My guide said, idiot soul, vent your wrath through your horn. Search your neck for the belt binding your mighty breast. This is Nimrod, who caused the confusion of languages. Let's leave him. All speech is as meaningless to him as his is to others. We continued left and found another giant, more fierce and large. He was tightly bound with chains from neck to waist, with one arm behind and the other in front. This is Ephialtes, who challenged Jove. His arms are forever bound, my leader said. If possible, I'd like to see Briareus, I said. You'll see Antaeus nearby, who is unbound and can place us at the bottom of the well. Briareus is bound farther away, he replied. Ephialtes suddenly shook himself, making me fear death more than ever. We moved on and came to Antaeus, who stood out from the cavern without his head. O you, who brought 1,000 lions for prey in Scipio's valley, place us below. Do not disdain it. This one can restore your fame on earth. He lives and still expects long life, said my master. Antaeus extended his hands, taking up my guide. Virgil, feeling embraced, said, come closer so I can take you, making one bundle of us. Antaeus gently placed us in the abyss that swallows Judas and Lucifer. He rose back like a mast in a ship. Canto 32. The ninth circle, the frozen lake of Cocytus. First division, China, traitors to their kindred. Commission de Pizzi. Second division, Antinora, traitors to their country. Bacca degli Abati and Buso de Dora. If I had rough, stridulous rhymes fit for this dismal hole where all the other rocks are thrust, I would express my thoughts more fully. But since I don't have them, I speak with fear. It's not a jest to describe the bottom of the universe, nor for a tongue that cries Mama and Babbo. May the muses who helped Amphion enclose Thebes help me, so my words match the facts. O wretched rabble, it's hard to speak of you. It would have been better if you had been sheep or goats. We descended into the dark well, beneath the giant's feet but far below. I scanned the high wall and heard, watch where you step. Don't trample the heads of the miserable brothers. I turned and saw a lake frozen like glass, not water. Even the Danube in winter never made such a thick veil. The dawn beneath the frigid sky wasn't so frozen. If Tambrinich or Pietrapana had fallen on it, it wouldn't have cracked. As frogs in water croak with their muzzles out, dreaming of gleaning, so the disconsolate shades lay in the ice, livid as far as shame shows. Their teeth chattered like storks. Each held their face bent down. From their mouths, the cold, from their eyes, their hearts' sorrow witnessed itself. I looked around and saw two so close their hair mingled. Who are you? I asked. They bent their necks, lifted their faces, and their eyes, which were moist within, overflowed and froze, locking their tears. They butted together like goats, overwhelmed with wrath. One who had lost his ears from the cold still faced downward and said, Why do you reflect on us? If you want to know who we are, the valley where Vicenzio descends belonged to them and their father Albert. They came from one body, and you won't find a shade more deserving of being fixed in ice in all of China, not even he who was struck down by Arthur. If you're Tuscan, you know who I was, he added. I was commissioned de Pizzi, waiting for Carlino to absolve me. I saw 1,000 faces purple with cold, shuddering at frozen ponds. We advanced toward the middle, where everything of weight unites, and I was shivering in eternal shade. Whether by will, destiny, or chance, I don't know, but I struck a face with my foot. Why do you trample me? Unless you come to add to Monteperti's vengeance, why do you bother me? He growled. My master, wait for me to resolve a doubt, then you may hurry me, I said. My leader stopped, and I asked the blasphemer, who are you to scold others? Who are you to strike others' cheeks in Antinora? He replied. If you were alive, it would be too much. I am alive, and it may help you if you seek fame. Tell me your name, I responded. I want the opposite. Leave me alone, he said. I grabbed his scalp and said, name yourself, or lose your hair. Even if you strip me, I won't tell, he barked. Another cried, what's wrong, Baka? Enough jawing. Must you bark? I said, I care not if you speak, accursed traitor. I will report your truth. Go and tell what you want, but don't be silent about him who had his tongue so prompt. He weeps here for French silver. You'll find him here, where the sinners are cold, he replied. If asked who else is here, you'll see Beccaria, whose throat Florence slit. Johnny del Soldanier is there, with Ganelon and Tebodello who opened Faenza while the people slept. We had moved away when I saw two frozen together, one head as a hood to the other, gnawing at the skull. Tell me why you show such hatred against him, I said. If you rightfully complain, I'll repay you in the world above, if my words hold. Canto 33 Count Ugolino and Archbishop Ruggieri, 3rd Division of the 9th Circle, Tolomea, traitors to their friends, Friar Alberigo, Branco di Oria. The sinner lifted his mouth from his grim feast, wiping it on the hair of the head he wasted, and began, You want me to renew my desperate grief, which wrings my heart just to think of. But if my words can bring infamy to the traitor I gnaw, I'll speak and weep together. I was Count Ugolino, and this was Archbishop Ruggieri. Let me tell you why I am his neighbor. Because of his treachery, I was imprisoned and put to death. But you don't know how cruel my death was. Hear and judge if he wronged me. There's a tower called Famine because of me, where others will be locked up. Through its opening, I saw many moons pass. I dreamed a terrible dream that foresaw my future. Ruggieri hunted the wolf and its pups on a mountain, with Gualandi, Sismondi, and Lanfranchi ahead. The father and sons seemed exhausted, their flanks ripped by sharp tusks. I woke before dawn, hearing my sons moan and ask for bread. If you don't weep thinking of this, what do you weep at? They were awake, waiting for the usual food, each apprehensive. I heard the door lock below the horrible tower and stared at my sons' faces without a word. I didn't weep, turned to stone inside. They wept, and Anselm said, Father, what's wrong? Still, I didn't shed a tear or answer, not that day or the next. As dawn broke, I saw my reflection in their faces. In agony, I bit my hands, and thinking it was out of hunger, they said, Father, eat us. You clothed us with this flesh, now strip it away. I calmed myself not to make them sadder. We were silent that day and the next. On the 4th day, Gatto fell at my feet, saying, Father, why don't you help me? He died there, and I saw the others die between the 5th and 6th day. Blind, I groped over their bodies for 3 days, calling them after they were dead. Then hunger did what sorrow couldn't. He resumed gnawing the skull with his teeth, strong as a dog's. Ah, Pisa, disgrace of the people where sea is spoken. Since your neighbors are slow to punish you, let Caprea and Gorgona damn the Arno to drown everyone in you. If Count Ugolino betrayed your castles, you shouldn't have punished his sons, innocent of any crime, like modern Thebes. Their youth was betrayed by you. We moved on to where another group was ruggedly wrapped in ice, heads turned downward. Their tears froze in their eyes, forming crystal visors. Though my face was numb from the cold, I felt a breeze. Who sets this in motion? Isn't every vapor quenched down here? I asked. You'll soon see the cause of this wind, he replied. A soul in the frozen crust cried out, O souls so cruel that the last post is given to you, lift these frozen veils from my eyes so I can vent my sorrow before they freeze again. If you tell me who you are, I will help you, I replied. I am Friar Alberigo, who betrayed with fruit from a bad garden. I am here, getting dates for my figs, he said. Are you dead? I asked. I don't know how my body fares in the world. This place often receives souls before Atropos cuts the thread of life. As soon as a soul betrays as I did, a demon takes its body, and it falls here. Branca di Oria's soul is here, though his body still lives, he explained. I think you're lying, for Branca di Oria is alive, eating and drinking, I said. In Malbranche's ditch, where the pitch boils, Michel Zanche hadn't arrived when this one left a devil in his place. But remove these tears, he begged. I didn't open his eyes. To be rude to him was courtesy. Ah, Genoese, full of every vice. Why are you not scattered from the world? I found the vilest spirit of Romagna among you, who bathes in Cocytus but still lives above. Canto 34, the 4th division of the 9th circle, the Judeca, traitors to their lords and benefactors, Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, Brutus, and Cassius. Vexilla regis prodient inferni, my master said. Look ahead and see him. In the fog or approaching night, a windmill appears far off. I saw a similar structure, and for the wind, I hid behind my guide. We approached where the shades were entirely covered in ice, like straws and glass. Some lay prone, some stood, others bent like bows. My master stopped, saying, Behold this and the place where you must arm yourself with fortitude. I froze, unable to move. Think what I became, being deprived of both life and death. The emperor of this sorrowful realm emerged from the ice from his mid-breast. His size was immense. If he was once as fair as he is now foul, all tribulation must come from him. He had 3 faces, one vermilion in front, the others joined above the shoulders. The right was white and yellow, the left like those from the Nile Valley. Under each face, 2 wings stretched out like a bat's. He waved them, freezing Cocytus. With 6 eyes, he wept, and his 3 chins dripped tears and bloody saliva. Each mouth chewed a sinner. The one in front chewed Judas Iscariot head first. The others chewed Brutus and Cassius head down. Night is rising, and it's time to leave, my master said. We've seen everything. He took me, and we descended by holding on to Lucifer's shaggy sides. When we reached the point where his thigh joins the hip, he turned his head, climbing between the thick hair and the frozen crust. When we emerged, he set me down and outstretched his wary step. I looked up, thinking to see Lucifer as before, but saw his legs upside down. Rise, my master said. The way is long and difficult. The sun returns to Middle Tierce. We weren't in a palace corridor, but a natural dungeon with an uneven floor and dim light. Explain the ice and Lucifer's position, I asked. You were beyond the center when I grasped the hair of the worm who pierces the world. Now you're beneath the opposite hemisphere. This is the morning here when it's evening there. Lucifer fell from heaven and caused the land to rise here, leaving a void. We entered the hidden road to return to the bright world, climbing without rest until I saw the beautiful stars once more. Thence we emerged to see the stars once again.